Yep.
We ready, everybody? And Bertha's online. You're harassing me already?
Well, you just graduated. I thought you.
Okay, here we go. Let's call the meeting to order and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can we have the roll call, please? Sorry. Yeah, everybody silence their phones, please. I almost always do. Okay, so roll call.
Okay, Director Thomas,
I'm here.
Director Davidson,
Here.
Director Ratterman,
Here.
Director Underhill,
I'm keeping my cold symptoms up the hill.
you're here. Okay. And then President Cicada.
Here. Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So we'll move on to public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda, and comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. So maybe we have some public comment today.
Hi, my name is Donald Jensen. I live in Copropolis, and I am here to informally request that the board help put together an ad hoc committee of residents of Copropolis in an attempt to be aware of the things that are going on in Copropolis and be involved in the decision-making process, or at least informational process.
Okay, so you're asking for an ad hoc committee for board members or a committee?
A committee from our side that you guys would approve, that a committee would be, that we could put together a committee of community members, of the associations, of the business community, stuff like that, to where we would be informed of projects going on and things in Copropolis.
Okay, well, that item is not agendized, so we can't discuss it,
Okay.
but I will make sure Michael reaches out to you or,
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, we'll follow up.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? There he is. Hi.
Hello, Ralph Copeland, Copropolis. Look at that. I'd like to thank Mike Mickler, President Cicada, and Russ Thomas for coming to Copropolis. Also Jessica. And putting on a very informative presentation. And I just want to say, Mr. Minkler stood up there and took every question. I mean, he was out without no Kevlar, nothing. He took everything and just was awesome. Russ was an excellent contributor, and I hope Cindy really enjoyed the community atmosphere. Again, that Copropolis is very interested with what the CCWD is doing in our area, and that outreach you had last week shows us that this can be done. So again, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, we're glad you're here. Do we have anybody online for public comment? And nobody's raised their hand. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for making your comments. Let's move on to item number 3, the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion.
Move for acceptance. Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. You have to do a roll call.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes,
President Cicada.
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on to new business, item number 4A. Discussion action to approve the budgeted lease to own purchase of a new mechanics truck for $165,000 plus through Enterprise Fleet Management. And that's Damon. Hi, Damon.
Good afternoon, directors. Thank you. So once again, CCWD incorporated the lease to own purchase of enterprise vehicles in the budget this fiscal year to the tune of $183,881. One of those vehicles that we plan to replace is an F-550 mechanics truck. And the overall cost for the upfit, the service body and the truck is $165,359. And Enterprise will finance that vehicle over 5 years for a monthly cost of $2,904. What they require is an upfit, basically a down payment for the upfit of $20,000. And then we would just pick up then the lease payment. What the ask is that the board approve the cost of $165 for the total purchase of the vehicle, but it would come out as part of the lease program. So as you know, this is year 3 of the lease program. Last year, we ordered 7 F-150s and 3 service trucks. We were only able to purchase a mechanics truck and a service truck because the F-150s were just production. We all know what happened with supply chain issues for the last year and a half or so. So that what we did this year is we just actually pushed the request for those 7 F-150s into this fiscal year and then added 2 service trucks and then this mechanics truck.
Is that what the 183 in the budget was for?
That's for
Initially?
this year's vehicles, yes.
Okay.
So when you look at the
Fiscal year
budget,
22, 23.
that's correct.
Okay.
So when you look at the budget, you'll see right at 84,000 for the past previous years of the program's lease payments. So all of those are lease payments for those 10 vehicles that we purchased year 1 and those 9 vehicles that we purchased year 2, because we purchased less that year because 2 of them were dump trucks, if you remember. And so then the third year, which we were hoping it to be 21, 22, we only had a couple vehicles. And so that budgeted cost for this fiscal year covers their lease payments and these lease payments plus upfit. Now, the great thing about the request for purchases this fiscal year is there aren't a ton of upfit costs. The F-150s really don't require upfit costs like service bodies, lift gates. Some of them will have lift gates, but so usually we pay a significant portion of those upfit costs right at the outset of the lease request. Really, the one for us this year is this mechanics truck, which is over 100,000 and requires the 20,000 down for the upfit.
I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
How many lease vehicles do we have in the program right now?
we have 22.
22, and what's our goal to have how many all be
Well,
leased?
So I don't know if that would necessarily be our goal. So we're still working on an overall program for vehicles and equipment, because with the way pricing has fluctuated in this past year, it has opened our eyes to the opportunity of we could leverage this program to own them at year 5 if it suits us. So it kind of makes what our overall goal is somewhat of a moving target. I can tell you though that the benefit of the program has allowed us within the past 3 years to replace 22 vehicles, whereas in the prior 20 years, we replaced 31 vehicles. So we did 22 in 3, and then prior to that, we did 31 in 20. And so we still have 27 trucks that are 15 years old or older that we deploy every day. And so we're going to need to definitely push this program through for another year. The one thing that's looming is the 2027 electric vehicle requirement, right?
Is this one all electric?
This is not.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure that a trailer next to it can pull the generator.
Well, that's so our goal is kind of if we can get as many vehicles into the fleet as possible before 2027, let's go ahead and do that because.
So any vehicle that's in this program or you already own will not be required to be replaced with electric?
That's correct. So what happens is any model year purchase from 2027 on still currently has to be electric. And that's for full 1-ton service truck. That's for dump truck. That's for vac
So-
on.
The truck that you're asking us to approve today, is that going to be one that we will purchase it at the end of the 5-year lease?
That's the plan. Yes.
Okay,
Well,
and what's the purchase price at the end of that?
So just to
Dollar.
clarify, it's called a lease program. It's really a misnomer. We
That's
buy
correct.
these vehicles. That's why this is before the board today.
Lease
Right.
purchase.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a purchase to own.
Okay. So
Basically,
how
or
much
lease to
will-
own program. So by doing this, you know, as Damon said, this was already budgeted, and normally we don't bring the enterprise vehicles to the board for approval for the individual vehicle purchase, because they're all budgeted and they're usually under 100,000. But this one, the only reason this one came to the board is because it exceeds staff's purchasing.
Okay. Well, one of the comments I want to make when, you tell us it's budgeted, okay, fine, but it's still a really big purchase.
Yeah.
And you may have brought this during the budget to say, oh yeah, we're going to be coming to you guys to spend 165,000 for one vehicle. I may have remembered that. But during our budget process, I want to know those kinds of things during the budget process. Just because we approved the budget and not knowing that there was a vehicle of 165, I just would like more information on that. That's a huge purchase and a huge discussion. So back to, you're going to buy it with the $20,000 down for the uplift, and then $2,900 a month for 5 years. And then how much will you pay for it to purchase
It'll
it?
be paid off. That's it.
Oh, okay.
You're done.
Well, sometimes even on the lease to owns, you still have some kind of a,
Well, yeah, that's what, yeah.
dollar at the end or whatever.
Yeah, so that's why Michael said this is essentially just like
Okay.
a
And so because we buy this one in 2027, you would not come to us and say, now we have to have an electric vehicle. Is that correct? That won't happen?
that's correct. So with the purchase of this vehicle, our 3-man mechanics crew will have the oldest vehicle will be 2018. And we can push that into beyond 2027.
And these vehicles go out to all the plants, do all repairs. They're
Yeah,
not, they're not vehicle repair and maintenance type thing. It's only for our plants. right?
that's correct. All of our infrastructure. So with the recent purchased mechanics truck, we were able to pull a pump out of a pump station and replace it with the upfit, the crane, the service body, and the truck itself. Whereas prior to, we would have to hire out a crane service to do so. So they do a lot of really beneficial work for all our infrastructure.
We've asked you, and it might be too soon to have the answer. I'd like to know, and one of the reasons for going through the lease is we're going to save money on repairs,
That's
right?
true, yeah.
So do we have any documentation of how much money we've saved? Or is it too
We-
early? 'Cause
We
we're-
we do from previous years, but I don't have an updated, fresh look at the whole program. And I'll provide that to you.
But that's not gonna be a dollar, I mean, prices have escalated on anything like that dramatically, so it's not gonna be, 5 years ago was not gonna compare with, 2023.
That's right.
We gotta
There'll be some caveats.
make some sense.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the reasons why I wanted to know how many more vehicles or how many in place, because I believe the goal is to get all these new cars and rotating them every 5 years. So at that point, we can compare to what service costs were to lease, because in theory, the lease, we don't have any repairs, right?
That's correct. Yep, that's right.
Your turn, Miss.
Go ahead, Scott. Well, I was gonna make a motion.
Director Underhill would like to make a comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just, I'm looking at the price of 165,000. Now, we can be sure that Enterprise has done everything that they could to give us the lowest price for what product we're buying,
Yes. So
Are they explaining to us what, all of what makes the total cost?
absolutely. So they have a very detailed quote for the purchase. And currently there's only 2 of these trucks on lots in California. So the board could approve the purchase and we could be forced to wait a little bit until we can get another one if those are already off the lot. So they were able to choose between 2 vehicles, and this vehicle that they are looking to purchase is in Southern California, and it is the cheaper of the 2.
And how long will it take for us to get it?
Well, as what happened with the famous bucket truck or infamous bucket truck,
Right.
staff drove down and picked it up the very next day.
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
that was more cost effective than having it delivered.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
All right.
I'm
Russ.
good.
Thank you, Bertha.
Okay,
Mhm.
since these vehicles, particularly this vehicle with the crane and everything on it, will be expected to go out in all weather and everything, is it gonna be four-wheel drive?
It is, yes.
Okay, that explains why it's. so-
Yes, yeah, right.
And revisiting this 2027 fiasco, are you having any luck, those of you that are participating in the Aqua attempt to get the CARB Resources Board, Air Resources Board, to listen to the fact that we should be equal to a fire department or a police department to be exempt from that?
Yeah, so I've really been struggling to get the whole group, the Aqua Working Group feels like the first responder ship has somewhat sailed. And I keep trying to bring everybody back to that because I really feel it's fundamentally true. When you have a water main break in a major thoroughfare, it's an emergency. And so
Did you see the picture today of, probably 20 acres of utility service trucks parked, 100 miles inland to respond to the hurricane?
right. Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
great example of that. But what about like, one of our legislators? Can we request that they, try to make this into law?
So to interrupt you really quick, one step that the working group is taking right now through Aqua is drafting a letter directly to the governor to try to get some traction with him to understand that water and wastewater utilities are first responder groups. And this is what you need to understand about this ruling that's going to be implemented. And then the separate track is on the variance procedure and policy associated with vehicles. And are the emergency responder vehicles that are associated with water and wastewater utilities, can they receive a variance rather than some of the administrative vehicles? So we're trying to play ball with the pathway that the CARB board has set for us. And we have another meeting with the director on October 10th. Yet at the same time, we're still trying to go beyond and go directly to the governor. But I'm still trying to harp on the fact that we are first responders. And I actually offered up to the CARB board to come here to CCWD, and I will take them on a tour of where some of our infrastructure lives so they can get an understanding of, yes, they are four-wheel drive vehicles. They have to go out in the snow and they have to cross muddy terrain in the middle of the night. And so they have to function effectively, because a lot of what happens and what gets lost in translation is you have got a flat grid with a two-wheel drive garbage truck and it's battery powered and everybody's happy. Well, CHP is not going to be happy when they see an F550 with, 2,000 pounds of batteries going down the highway. They're going to ask towing a mini excavator. That's just not going to work. I mean, so we need to really circle back to the first responder argument.
Do these cars have lights on them to work in those areas that, like an open dirt area?
So that's a great question about battery powered vehicles, because there's not just the operation of the vehicle, there's all the ancillary equipment that has to operate also. So we have LED lights that we deploy. This mechanic's truck will be covered in LED lights so it can work in the middle of the night. There's a welder on the vehicle, there's a crane on the vehicle.
But these vehicles, I mean, it would seem to me that they're gonna want the vehicle to be propelled by battery power, but the equipment is gonna run by a generator.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're seeing too. So we're going to be towing generators all over the place. 49 horsepower generators, not 50 horsepower generators.
Make a motion.
Well, hang on one second.
Is it, I'm not an advocate of throwing in the towel, but when you say you're meeting in October with the CARB board, but can you bring in some horsepower, bring in Dave Egerton into that conversation? So
That's a great question. I can definitely bring that up to the working group. We have some, the Met is involved, and we've got some substantial players in the water world in California, and they are just giving us the cold shoulder currently. So, but I will definitely bring that up.
Yeah, and NACWA is really engaged in there. As Damon said, there's a lot of heavy hitters that are involved, and Damon's one of them. I put him on that list. He's been a really active participant in that group. And having CCWD's perspective at that table, I think, is really important. And so I think, you know, Nick Blair is the Aqua staff member that is leading that group, but where appropriate, yeah, he'll bring Dave in or bring others in. Our legislators have always been opposed to this. And it's in the administrative agencies realm now, as opposed to the legislature. So I don't know that there's a whole lot they could do, but as you all know, we'll have 2 new representatives that's in the Capitol this next year. So we'll be scheduling meetings with them, I'm sure, early in the calendar year, and this will be on the list of
Well,
things. That we
what I'm
want to talk to
requesting
them
is
about.
that we don't mess with the current law, but we ask them to add, water and sewer municipalities as a first responder.
Mhm.
I mean, that wouldn't change the existing one.
Right.
Yeah, that's within, I think that is within CARB's discretion to make that judgment call. But yeah, the legislators could chime in on that.
Well, I'd like to continue hearing about the electric vehicle law and what's going to happen in 2027. But as far as purchasing this vehicle, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budgeted lease to own purchase of a new 2022 F550 mechanics truck for $165,359.90.
A second.
Rest we are all done.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? Anybody online? All right, let's take a vote.
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Damon.
Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to new business 4B, update of the CCWD service area water production. That would be Brad. Hi, Brad.
Good afternoon, directors, and for the public here, I'm Brad Arnold, Water Resources Manager for Calaveras County Water District. Good afternoon. This will be an update on our water supply and production, current conditions, and really at the end of August of this year, so from January through August. Excuse me, recall when we're talking about production here, that is taking the raw water through our treatment process at our various water treatment plants. So we're really talking about from that raw water to that treatment process of what eventually goes into our distribution system. We'll follow up with an update later on about the consumption side, because again, production can include things, not only customer demand, but operational flushing, other conditions, as well as storage within the system, losses, et cetera. So we'll follow up with the customer demand side in a future agenda memo. But looking again at purely what do we divert from raw water and what are we treating versus prior year data, we see that we're around 99% of long-term average for all of our areas combined. So we're essentially at that long-term average of 2011 through to 2021. So we're kind of hovering around that point, but we are down 7% in production statistics since last year at this time. So we are seeing a decrease in response to what you all enacted with stage 2, the great work that's been done by Jessica and Ops and others to try and encourage conservation. Again, we're talking about purely how that backs into what we're treating in our various water treatment plants. We'll notice that in the figures that are provided in the agenda memo here, that our rural areas are still rather high, talking about Sheep Ranch, Wallace, West Point. Those areas are still above average for production for this time, even compared to last year. But some of our larger service areas, Jenny Lind, Ebbets, and Copper, are all kind of at or below where we'd expect them to be, given, again, these encouraged water use efficiency practices and everything else. Also provided for you all here are a snapshot of where we're at with our reservoirs. Again, this is talking about the end of August. It's provided in the last table in the agenda packet here. I'll point out that most of them that we see, even for our small areas, the White Pines, the Bummerville Storage Reservoir up in West Point, are at or above this level for this time of year. Our biggest reservoirs, such as New Spicer Meadow Reservoir up the hill along Highway 4 in the North Fork watershed, North Fork Stanislaus, that is, which for everyone here is what provides water to Copperopolis as well as our Ebbets Pass service area. That's at about 84% of this time, of normal for this time of year, I should say. So again, we're close, but not quite where we would expect to be normal. That's in large part due to the drought, as well as a lot of operational outflows, fish releases, things we need to meet on the North Fork Stanislaus in the watershed in terms of requirements on how those reservoirs are operated. But again, all things considered, third year of a drought plus, we're actually doing quite well, at least on that system. The one I will point out for the directors here today is our New Hogan system, which generally speaking, we're do quite well on. That's mainly for our Jenny Lynn service area in Valley Springs. We are at around 53% of average for this time of year, which is concerning. Of course, if we go into another dry year or don't get any sort of precipitation in that watershed, that could help bring those numbers back up. We could start to approach minimum pool levels. We could have issues with what we're diverting with versus what Stockton East is diverting downstream of us. There are some growing concerns in that system because, again, as we point out in the agenda memo here, we are only asking to use about 5,500 of our nearly 31,000 acre foot allocation that we get out of that reservoir, and that, quite frankly, we pay for. But we have heard word that Stockton East is planning to use basically everything else on that, owing to some issues in the Stanislaus watershed. We could start to approach the minimum pool levels, which could impact even just our small amount that we're trying to take out of the system. So Michael, myself, Matt, Dave Cameron, we're trying to be on top of that to make sure that we've sent the letters, notices to Stockton East saying, this is our allocated water, respect the contract sort of thing. And we'll make sure to monitor and keep you all up to date as we see what happens in this water year going forward.
When we are at minimum pool, I was always under the assumption that the bottom of the lake is ours.
Yeah, there is a portion in the bottom of the lake which goes to us, and it actually is, I want to say around 7,700 acre feet, which again is more than what we need for demand in there. But we start to run into conditions with, obviously the Bureau operations and everything else that's happening there in terms of how we get that water out. I don't know that it would, and I'll say this with a giant caveat, but given that we know we have a minimum amount in that pool, I think we would be able to work with them to ensure that we still meet our domestic demands. But I'm looking at those ag folks downstream and saying, what do we need to push through the system to make sure their intakes are still working?
When we have our conversation with the ag folks down there, they're the same ag folks that are getting the water from Stockton East. And, we need to maybe alert them of the fact that, hey, if it push comes to shove and you guys take all the water downstream, we probably won't have water for your ranches later. And maybe that could influence some Stockton East board members.
Well, one of them is a Stockton East board member.
Well,
That's an interesting discussion because there's some tension may not be the right word, but right, if you take too much from one, there may not be enough for the other.
Concern, maybe.
Yeah. And so definitely, and as you alluded to, Director Davidson, we do have a meeting plan to come up with the Calaveras ag folks where we're going to try and reach out to them, given where we're at with the drought, make sure that they're doing okay, and to just see kind of what opportunities are down there for us to coordinate more often with them and to kind of move forward in what hopefully ends the drought with a nice, wet year. For the folks that are just here from Copper, again, I mentioned that a lot of your water supply is coming from the North Fork Stanislaus up in New Spicer Meadow. For those that are familiar, way up on Highway 4 past Arnold. Again, we're looking at about 85% of where we'd expect this year, which is still a lot. It's a big reservoir for those that have been up there. And we'll continue to divert that out of Lake Tulloch as it moves downstream. And please conserve to the extent you're able to, because assuming if we don't get more rain and water that we're hoping for, that's what we're relying on. But hopefully we do. Hopefully I'm wrong and we get a lot of snow and this isn't an issue next year. So any additional questions or?
Yeah, just to kind of satisfy my curiosity, you started off by saying that our production levels on average are down about 7%, and you attributed that to conservation efforts and stuff. But how much of that do you suppose is attributable to the fixing leaks? I mean, we have been patching holes in our system for a couple of years now at a very aggressive rate. So
yeah, and it's a great question. That's where we hope to follow up with the consumption side later on. That's going to help address water losses and the fact that, as you point out, and as I've talked with Damon and Ops, we've spent a lot of money, and especially the Ebbets Pass system and others trying to reduce those operational water leaks. So we hope to have more firm data on that information in the next update for the board. But to your point, just even in the treatment plant production numbers themselves, of course, the less leaks we have, the less that the treatment plant has to push to maintain pressures, flows, everything else in the system. So we can certainly surmise that there's a portion of that that is due to our repairs on the system, just as there's a portion of that that have been customers responding to the drought. So we hope to have more firm numbers for you next time.
And the other thing that most of us who live in Copperopolis have been observing is the highway work. And I'm just really kind of curious about who's tabulating all the contractors that are drafting out of the meters, the fire hydrants down there. There must be hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that's been used on that Highway 4 improvement.
Yeah, and Damon can speak more.
Yeah, excuse me. So our engineering department issues the work order for the fire hydrant for construction, a fire hydrant meter, and then their distribution crews go ahead and deploy that meter, and then they read those meter reads, and then they plug those into a work order, and then engineering bills that through customer service.
Okay,
Although,
so-
just to clarify.
So we
Director
have that in-
Thomas, yeah, are you talking about the Highway 4, the wagon wheel project or the O'Byrne's project?
Well, both.
Both, gotcha. I think, because Caltrans, I think, is using other sources, right?
Well, they do have a pipeline that comes down from.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting
Yeah,
one, yes.
but I did follow a truck from Coppertown Square today that filled 3,000 gallons of water there and went up to, and he pulled in to the
So
construction
they,
site.
yeah, it's a mix.
So there are multiple jobs that do have construction meters in copper that are operating currently, and yeah, we can get you that data.
Yeah.
Because we do tabulate it and then we bill for that consumption.
How much is a 3,000 gallon water fill up with $5-6?
Yeah, it's not much, right?
1350.
Is this?
It's not much, yeah.
But I'm just wondering, I just want to make sure that we're capturing those fills in your analysis.
Yeah, we are, and we're actually taking additional steps to try and pull out and extract exactly those components out of these production figures. So I alluded to earlier that, production is made up of customer demand, operational flushing, these sort of hydrant and construction uses, losses, storage, all these other components that go into it. And we are working together, myself with operations staff, Jessica, IT, and others to try and make sure we're staying on top of that data.
Very
I
good.
also had a question.
Go ahead, Bertha.
Yes, I wanted to make sure that we're in compliance or we're following the state guidelines, because remember, we're always at worrying about whether or not we're going to be fined or penalized or whatever for our water usage, and where are we on that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Director Underhill, and I'll point out before I pass the mic over to Jessica perhaps. But again, we're talking about the production side here. So compared to last year, we're down 7%. Of course, the statewide mandate is 20%, but that really speaks again to just the customer consumption component across all of our service areas. So we hope to have that number for you next time. My understanding when I look at some of the data is that some of our service areas are in fact meeting that 20% target. Others are not. When you average across the entire batch of service areas, if you will, I do believe we are meeting it, at least our understanding at this time, but Jessica, I don't know if you have any more you want to add to that or, no, okay, nothing at this point, but yeah, Jessica's, tracking that along with myself, operations and others.
And there also, Director Thomas raised the point of construction water, there's been an increase in that. There's been an increase in other that are not necessarily because of a lack of conservation. It's just an increase in demand for legitimate reasons. And so that kind of sometimes will mitigate the ability to conserve. From our customers might be conserving 30%, but we have, some significant construction projects or some other things going on in different service areas that
Increased
change.
customer base as well.
And we have more people, so it changes those numbers.
Yeah, and that's, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
No, go ahead.
but I was just gonna say, that's sort of the third in the series of updates. Will be coming back with the legislation, if you recall, the 2018 conservation legislation and these various components for indoor, outdoor water loss use. I think we hope to at that point kind of bring that kind of full circle with what are we looking down to long-term in terms of legislative impacts and others that you talked about. We don't want to get fined if we can at all.
Anybody have any other more comments, questions?
Which that is, we don't need to get into it today, but that's just going to be a massive, massive challenge over the next few years. Foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? Any public comment online, Rebecca? All right, no actions necessary for this, correct?
No, nothing.
All right,
just
thank you,
informative. Yep.
Thank you, staff.
Yeah, Pierce, I think I have the next.
All right.
one.
Moving on to item 4C. Discussion action regarding Eastside GSA adoption of the Three Fall Ranch Reservoir Project. Brad, you're still here.
Hello again. Yeah, this item is talking about as a member of the Eastside Groundwater Sustainability Agency, or Eastside GSA, CCWD, along with Calaveras County, Stanislaus County, and Rock Creek as it's currently formed, essentially manages the portion of the eastern San Joaquin subbasin underlying Calaveras and Stanislaus counties. We've been in this since, I want to say, about 2017 or 18 with these other groups. For the group here, that's mainly in the areas of northwestern Calaveras County around Wallace Burson and Highway 26 and 12, kind of that triangle portion. So along with these other groups, we've implemented things like a groundwater sustainability plan, meeting the different Sustainable Groundwater Management Act objectives. And we're now moving into implementation, which is how are we ultimately going to bring this overdrafted groundwater basin into sustainable, targets and meeting these sustainability objectives by 2040 deadlines that the legislation has imposed on us. One of these topics, specific projects here, is the Three Fall Ranch Reservoir Project. This was brought to the GSA group, so to CCWD and these others earlier this year. The group reviewed to try and understand what impacts, if any, this project would have on the basin. It's a private group located down in Sonora Road of Stanislaus County, so it's outside of Calaveras County. But again, being that we're part of this GSA currently with the group, we've spent time reviewing that and trying to make sure that there will be no adverse impacts to us in the shared basin. Again, this group is private, looking, to take their own funding, their own private water supplies and rights, and to try and put together a project where they essentially get off of groundwater use by putting together a reservoir where they can store water. The current setup would net around 2,000 acre feet a year of reduced groundwater consumption, which again is great from a standpoint of trying to reduce overdraft. And at this point, they're not looking for any participation from CCWD or any of the individual GSA members. They're just looking for approval and acknowledgement of getting this project incorporated into the groundwater sustainability plan so that they can go after grant funding and other sorts of, benefits to try and move this project along with this private group that's leading it. What we're asking to do right here is that as a member of the Eastside Groundwater Sustainability Agency, that we would, along with the other members, adopt a resolution that just acknowledges that this project has been reviewed by the group, that it will provide benefits as we see it and have reviewed it at the staff level, and then ultimately pulls it into the plan so they can go and try and get grant funding. Again, at 2,000 acre feet a year, if this is successful, even over a 10-year period, 20,000 acre feet, that could go a long way in trying to reduce our overdraft obligation. Again, this is in Stanislaus. There's a lot of things to unpack as to who gets credit for that and others. But again, as far as a project goes, they're not asking anything from us besides just acknowledging this project as potentially benefiting the subbasin and then, allowing it to go after grant funds and other benefits.
Go ahead, Russ.
I don't know, maybe others would be interested in the mechanics of how this system is supposed to work to the benefit of the groundwater sustainability. I mean, they're going to capture surface water and impound it, and how is that going to? I don't know, just explain it to me. I don't.
Sure, absolutely. So this falls under the category of what's called an in lieu project. So in other words, it's using surface water in lieu of groundwater historically. We've got a group of farmers down in Sonora Road of Stanislaus County, again, within the GSA, even though not within CCWD's area, that have historically just pumped groundwater to meet their agricultural demands. And that's had an impact on the basement. That's contributed to this historic overdraft where we're using far more than that's naturally recharged into the system in any given year. So to combat that, this group has come together and said, well, they're going to create a reservoir, an above ground surface water reservoir. They're going to work on trying to purchase water from others, securing their own water rights to put water into that reservoir so that they use that water instead of relying on the groundwater. Now, under SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, you get credit for reducing that groundwater demand. So, this 2,000 acre feet a year we talked about, if those farmers are no longer relying on that 2,000 acre feet a year out of the ground, but instead of surface water, that's a benefit. You've reduced the strain on the groundwater basin, even though it's surface water. So again, they would capture that rather than it flowing downstream into the delta or wherever have you.
Two questions. If we were to to change our GSA, if we were to, someone else talking?
Nope, you're good.
I don't, did we discuss that? Did we discuss that in the open?
Well, I know if the GSA were to change, the members of the GSA were to change, let me just ask it a different way. Is everybody, is all 4 members of our current GSA bringing this to their boards?
The answer, yes, thank you. The answer is yes. They are bringing the same resolution that we've drafted here today, just to acknowledge the project and to help get it into the plan. Regardless of what may happen with GSA going forward, this will benefit the sub-basin as a whole, obviously getting those folks off of groundwater. But where the credit goes and to whom, we may have to consider.
Okay, and the second part of the question, has it gone before any boards, Stanislaus, Rock Creek, or the County of Calaveras yet?
Not yet. We are the first, but both Calaveras and Stanislaus have notified me that they're scheduled. They've sent out their draft packets. I think going into.
I think
Oh, did Calaveras?
they might have taken it up yesterday.
Oh,
I'll confirm.
All right, I might be wrong. They might have done it already.
You answered my questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one question. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there any opportunity for CCWD to sell them this 20,000 acre feet?
Great question. I know it was attempted in, I want to say around 2017, 18, to take some of our Stanislaus water and get it to them. Obviously, there are challenges with any sort of transfer sales, especially outside of our county. Could there theoretically be opportunities? Yes. Originally, this private group approached us individually to try and see if there were such opportunities. But as always, that's going to be a difficult, nut to crack, so to speak, to try and get that water through Malonis and Tulloch to try and, reap any sort of benefit out of it outside our county. So we'll continue to.
Where else would they get it?
They're looking at 2 sources. One of them is buying it from OID in their pre-14 supply. Yes. And then the other is potentially from Stockton East Water District that has their canal coming out of New.
So eventually it will be water from California.
That's kind of why I paused there. I don't want to say too much of the group here, but at least someone's using our water somehow.
You want to unmute Bertha and let's see if Bertha has any questions?
I think she can unmute if she's.
She did it herself.
I can unmute and
Yeah.
no, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right.
I'll move for acceptance.
Second.
All right, any public comment? Any online?
No.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Okay, Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, directors.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
All right, we're moving on to item 4D, discussion action regarding rescinding policy number 6, operational assistance policy, and that's with Michael.
All right. How often do we get to cut through red tape? So this is an interesting item. So this initially started, it's probably been 6 months now when Tuolumne Utilities District staff reached out to us to coordinate on a couple of different issues. One of the main ones, though, was an operational assistance agreement between the agencies and usually in the event of an emergency, but that can be broadly defined. And we've had a series of really positive collaborative meetings with TUD since that time, and are going to continue doing that on a lot of different fronts, not just to, once this, hopefully this agreement is completed soon, but there's a lot of other ways. TUD is a very similar agency in a lot of ways to CCWD, so there's a lot that we can collaborate on. So what we, though, started focusing on was reaching agreement on an operational assistance policy or agreement. The district has an operational assistance policy. It was adopted in 2011. We amended it in 2020. And at the time when we amended it, it was mainly to allow for, it was restricted to in-county mutual aid agreements. And at the time we were talking to Amador Water Agency. And so we amended the policy to allow for agreements with other agencies that are outside of the county. We still have never executed an agreement under that policy. And we've had other situations where agencies have contacted us and asked or inquired about mutual aid agreements. We send them our policy and our template agreements that are adopted as a part of the policy, and it kind of stalls there. And I think it's because the policy is a little bit unnecessarily complicated. And what we ended up doing with TUD is working off of a model agreement that they provided initially that was, they kind of mashed together template agreements, I think, from other sources, CSDA, JPIA, and presented a draft to us. We made some changes to it, and over the course of a few meetings, we reached an at least at the staff level, a tentative agreement on a draft. And then we went back and looked at our policy and realized that the policy doesn't really add anything. We can achieve everything we need in terms of protecting the district's interests and putting the district in a position to benefit from these agreements and also respond and assist other agencies while still keeping our top priority on our service areas and our customers and our operational readiness, and not incurring any cost or liability when we do respond when other agencies need assistance. So we can achieve all those things through the agreements. So the proposal that we're bringing to the board is to rescind our operational assistance policy and authorize staff to enter into these bilateral agreements. We included the draft of the agreement that we've worked out with TUD as sort of a model. We're not asking for approval of that agreement from the board, but it demonstrates the direction that this would go in terms of, the key points, the district having no obligation to respond in the event there is a request for mutual aid, if we're going to prioritize our operational needs first. If we do respond, that there's reimbursement for our labor and equipment costs and material costs, and that all of that is worked out in advance, which eliminates, any disagreement, hopefully over those things. It addresses the insurance issues and, all the things that could get complicated, because we've always told other agencies, even if we don't have an agreement with you and you have an emergency, call us and we'll see what we can do. And the same is true for us. We'll call when we need help. And we have good working relationships with other agencies. But there are a lot of issues that can arise when providing assistance outside of our jurisdiction. So that's why we would prefer to have these agreements in place in advance. And we think this is the most efficient way to do that. So the request for the board is to adopt the resolution rescinding the policy, and authorize staff to enter into bilateral mutual assistance agreements similar to the draft that we included. Although Matt pointed out that the venue in the event of any disputes will not be Santa Barbara County, will be Calaveras County.
I have
Some just, or Tuolumne, mutually agreed to, yeah, we'll work on that language, but it was, as we said, it was kind of brought together from different templates, and somehow Santa Barbara County got left in there.
the motion is using the words substantially similar.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, is that the best legal term that we can come up with to, we point to one agreement that was prepared by TUD and it'd be substantially similar to that. Is that the best way to?
Yeah, and we also have had a lot of input in drafting the version of the agreement that's in there. This is something we worked on together. The key, I think the reason I went with that language and did it without asking Matt, so we can get his opinion on this too, was because I think those key terms that I mentioned that are the things that are addressed in the policy right now, no obligation to respond if we're not ready for it, no liability to the district if we choose not to respond. Costs, are all reimbursed, and the insurance and the indemnification issues are all resolved in that agreement. If we were to change any of those key terms to this agreement, that's something that we would bring back to the board.
And that holds water in a court of law, substantially similar and including those parts. Without pointing them out directly is what I'm getting at. Without pointing out the key parts that you just mentioned are key. But they're not listed specifically. It just says substantially similar.
I'm assuming Matt's going to agree with me.
Yeah, Matt's gonna comment anyway.
Yeah, I'm a comment. So would it be enforceable? Yes. Could we explain what that means? Yes. And I think that, I think Michael was trying to get away from basically rescinding a policy and then creating a document that's the exact same thing as the policy we just had. But yeah, that, I think with the board's direction and clarification, if you want to, as part of the motion, that would be fine to accept it and indicate that those are the key things you want, which is obviously the equipment costs, the reimbursement, and our liability and insurance would be, I mean, in my opinion, that'd be the 4 key things that we need. And if those change, they need to come back to you guys.
And we would never want this to have to come back to the board before implementing an agreement. That would kind of defeat the emergency side purpose, I'm guessing. But would this be signed in the middle of the night in the event of an emergency?
So the way the templates that we have right now, we have 2 different templates, the way the policy works right now. And one is an emergency response agreement. In the event of an emergency, here's the agreement, let's work it out. And that, you can imagine the response we get. So, and we had a situation where a couple of years ago, that snowstorm in Arnold that kind of shut down Arnold for a week, and we got a request for assistance for some equipment. And it's not the right time to say, hey, could you review this agreement and let's draft a scope of work for the agreement.
Right.
And then we'll provide you with this side by side with tracks or with this snowcat or whatever it is. It doesn't work in that set of circumstances, right? You need to be able to just respond. And with the understanding though, that, we need, if you break that piece of equipment, you're going to buy it, and, any other issues that may come up. And so that's why, we would try to do this well in advance. If it's in the middle of the night and it's in the middle of an emergency that's already underway, that's not ideal with this agreement or any other agreement.
Would you anticipate having an agreement like this for each entity that you could consider MSD, UPUD?
In fact,
So all these would be done after this is approved. If it's approved, then you would go ask each one to do this.
And in fact, I failed to mention Joel Metzger has been involved in these negotiations as well. So I assume, hopefully we can complete this agreement between CCWD and TUD. I suspect soon after that, there'll be another one with both of those agencies independently with Utica, and then probably the Utica agencies, the member agencies, MSD. We've had discussions with Blue Lake Springs about this, Snowshoe Springs, I mentioned Amador.
CPUD now.
Well, let's not,
Well,
CPUD. Yeah.
Could we, or is this what you're asking, approve this as a agreement? This one's for TUD, but use this going forward to where you wouldn't have to bring it to us and say, oh, can you have an
That's the
agreement with
plan.
MSD? Okay.
Exactly, yeah. So we, and that's why we said the way we did this today is it's not approval of that agreement. But this would authorize staff to then enter into these
Fill
agreements.
the blanks with who you're.
Essentially, yeah, fill in the blanks. The other agencies might have, minor changes they want to make. How lawyers can be, there may be, some editing that happens, but those key terms, we wouldn't be flexible on unless it did come back to the board. But for the most part, yeah, we can work out, we can tailor those agreements to individual agencies, and they would just be 2-party agreements at that point.
On the previous policy, the operational assistance policy that this is supposed to replace, there's a reference to providers that are signatory to a California wastewater or wastewater agency response network, the WARN 2007. So where is that language in the new thing?
So I don't think it needs to be in there. The language was simply saying that it doesn't supersede that or interfere with that. And these agreements wouldn't either. But Cal Warren isn't something we've really utilized either. So I don't, I think having these bilateral agreements where we've worked them out between the 2 agencies, and there's I think there's less chance of any disagreement or disputes doing it this way.
As you know, some of your board members went and got trained last week or in Napa.
I'm excited
You're
about
excited?
the implications of that, yes.
Okay. And one of the things that I took away from that is that we should go through our policy manual and see if we can kind of reduce the legalese when required. And this whole thing strikes me as being something that was put together by somebody who really wants to expand on legalese. This is an emergency situation that this is supposed to respond to. So why can't we just have bullet points that says, hey, if you've got a problem, we're going to help you. We expect to get reimbursed for our costs.
Yeah.
But why does it take 4 pages to do this? That's, I'm looking at 2 lawyers here to explain to me why.
There you go.
Why
You answered your own question.
can't it be, in this particular circumstances, covering a potential emergency, it should be able to, we should be able to respond immediately.
Yeah. So I think that's the intent of this agreement. There is some language, we wanted to make sure that it's as streamlined and as efficient as possible, but that it also protects the agencies that are involved and covers all the bases that we needed to cover.
I'll just remind everybody, years back, when the flume burned down, Angels Camp didn't have any water. Our general manager at the time, drilled a big ass well, and we had to fight like crazy to get reimbursed for that. It was a big giant conflict. So, there's plenty of reason to be efficient in the agreement. And it was another one of those emergency situations, and it was handled poorly all around. But, there is reasons for some of this stuff.
But all this language does is it gives you a very questionable advantage in a court case. I think that there would be no less able to recover.
I think the huge benefit of it is that there is an agreement in place when that emergency occurs. You already got a contractual arrangement, an agreement to help. And if both sides agree to 4 pages or 3 pages or bullet points,
Yeah.
and everyone agree, it doesn't even matter, as long as it's signed and in the book. And if we do reach out to all these agencies, and I'm hoping that we will, and Murphy Sanitary should, be first in line to
And why do you say that?
because you're sitting here listening to it, and it is beneficial to both parties.
And that is the intent here. We don't want to be hammering these things out during an emergency. And some
No.
examples of that
Or
with TUD.
especially afterwards.
Right. And some recent examples of that with TUD are, there've been a couple of calls from them within the last couple of years. One while Ed was still there, and then one from Dawn, or incidents over there where we're checking in with them going, hey, the tank failure, they had a tank collapse. As soon as we hear about that, we're gonna reach out to them and say, do you need any assistance? Or they reached out to us, multiple agencies, not just TUD, multiple agencies reached out to us when the electrifier started and said, are you guys doing okay? What do you need? Those things are fantastic. To have those relationships with other water agencies, critical. The issue that could come up is, let's say they did need some help and we were out there, or our crews were out there with our brand new mechanics truck, helping rebuild that water tank, for example, and it breaks. And then I wouldn't expect this to happen because we have really good working relationships with them, but we have some disagreement about, well, who's going to pay to replace that crane? We could avoid all of that if these agreements are hammered out in advance. And so I think that's the intent here.
Plus, we're going to avoid the emergency board meetings that, in the past have been, maybe you can only get a couple of board members, and then you got to wait for the other agency to meet. In Calaveras County, it could easily be 3 or 4 different agencies that have to meet before we can come up, actually participate.
Right.
So, I support this. I'll make a motion.
Restaurants to finish.
Well,
Being very patient.
I just want to make sure that the logistics of this will be that it's going to be a pre-signed agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody picks up the telephone call and it says, under the agreement that we signed back in 2022, we need your help.
Right.
So you dispatch. Okay.
Right.
So
Well,
And
it's
those
up to
issues-
us if we dispatch.
Yeah.
And I'm in total agreement for this, mainly for the fact that we thought about this in 2011 when we put this together, that, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's go help everybody. And we haven't been able to have one signed up yet because our policy is too tight, too much red tape, too much involvement. And if this actually works and we get agreements with other people, which I'm expecting to hear about soon, maybe a future agenda item in the next couple of months is how many of these do we have? I'll say that now instead of later when we
That's what I-
talk.
And we would, I think every time we do this, that's a success. We really look forward to opportunities to partner with other agencies. So yeah, we would absolutely bring that back to the board.
What I want to say is we want to direct you to get all the agents, reach out to all the agencies in the county and the other two that you're looking at and bring it back to us and tell us how many are signed or how many are working with on signing. Now, if we approve this, we know that they're moving forward and
And those that don't, there'll be repercussions. Is that what
Yeah.
you're suggesting?
No, but at least we know that, you
No.
know, we don't want you to sign this and then it's not a priority.
Absolutely. So I think probably one way to go about it would be, and I don't want to steal any of Jessica's thunder on the external affairs report, but at one point we've used Calaveras Conserves in a lot of different ways. It's just a great way to network with all of the local water agencies. And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with conservation. It's just, hey, use that email list. And we did that in the past. At some point, somebody had asked about our a mutual aid, and I think we used that email list to say, here's our policy and here's these template agreements. And again, no response because it's a little too cumbersome.
Well,
So we could do that again and say, hey, we've revised our process. We eliminated the policy. Here's a template. If you're interested, let's work on an agreement between our agencies.
let's go to Bertha.
Okay, no, I wanted to know, to what extent did we help TUD? They had a blown water tank, or I don't know about that situation.
We ended up not, I don't think they requested any assistance from us at that point. I was just using those as examples of, scenarios where we might be called on to
Oh,
help.
okay,
But,
I
yeah,
thought.
they had
Go
a
ahead.
water tank fail and flooded a house. About a year ago, year and a half ago.
It just collapsed.
Yeah, so we're working on replacing our tanks in part to avoid that scenario, but yeah, that's obviously a nightmare situation.
Do we
for
need a
water
motion here?
agency.
What about a scenario like a small district that only has 3 operators? And all 3 operators are incapacitated and we need somebody to come in and be standby for
Yeah,
backups and stuff. You could.
absolutely.
Loan an
And that's one of
employee.
the things we like about this methodology is it doesn't have to be an emergency. It doesn't have to be a declared disaster or any of that. It can be, you know what, our operators are all out with COVID or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And can you provide some assistance, and we can kind of schedule that in.
Right.
And probably, yeah, help. And
Nice.
so, yeah, it's kind of open-ended as to what the request for assistance could be for.
Okay, now your motion.
Like to make a motion to rescind district policy number 6, operational assistance, and authorize the general manager, whoever that might be at any given time, to enter into agreement substantially similar to the attached draft agreement.
Second.
All right, any public comment? Any comments online? Seeing none, can we have the roll call, please?
Director Thomas,
Yes.
Director Davidson,
Yes.
Director Ratterman,
Yes.
Director Underhill,
Yes.
President Cicada.
Yes. All right,
Okay, thank
moving
you. We'll
on.
report back on the
Yeah.
agreements,
That would be really good and make a good effort.
or whoever
That's
the
all you
GM
can
is.
do.
Take some time. Have them report back.
All right, we have no old business, so we're going to move on to reports. We have Jessica, External Affairs Monthly Report. It looks very nice, by the way.
Good afternoon. I'm excited that this is going to be a new part of board meetings moving forward. And I'm happy to share everything that we've been doing on external affairs sides of things. Always a little bit of a delay. First, I want to just touch base on recap the events that we've had over the last couple of months. So the first big one was our 75th anniversary. We finally had it, and I think it turned out really well. I loved the whole event, and my favorite part was honestly talking to all of the retirees and hearing their stories and seeing them reconnect. That was just really amazing to watch. So thank you all for being there and being a part of it. The other big event we had was the town hall meeting in Copperopolis that I recognize many of you that were there. And that was a big turnout. So we had originally scheduled that for the project kickoff for our copper lift station project. And we had Mozingo construction there as well. But during that time from scheduling, there were a lot of questions and concerns about biosolids and that issue. So within that that town hall, we were able to talk about both projects and biosolids, and I think there was a really good discussion. And it was great to see a big turnout. We were expecting potentially 100 people, and I think between attendees that were there in the building as well as online, we were well over 100 attendees. So it was a good turnout.
Is that more than the West Point Town Hall?
A little bit bigger.
Check the tape, yeah.
Yeah, because that, there was so much on.
I wanted to see the picture of that
It was
West
great.
Point.
Really? And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you is the first school presentation that I've done since being here. So now that COVID restrictions have lifted, I'm really excited to be able to start doing that. So I went to Toyon Middle School and presented about, I was asked to present about what a water district does, about, where we get our water from, and talk about drought as well. So I took that as an advantage to educate the students about how lucky we are to live where we live, and showing them where our watersheds are, and really we're getting our water in our backyard, and many people don't have that luxury.
How did they respond to this presentation?
They were super excited. It was on a Friday, and they asked if I could come back on Monday. So it went really well, and talked about drought. And then I took our meter contraption. I love taking that thing everywhere I go. We went outside and showed them how to read a water meter, and they loved it. So we spent probably 20 minutes just showing them how a water meter works and how to read a water meter. And then their teachers, for their homework that night, was to find the water meter on their property and see what kind of water meter they had. So they would like me to come back and present to other classes. And they also reached out to their contacts at Calaveras High School because they think this would be good. And this is something that I really hope that we can start doing throughout the county to educate.
Do you think the kids were surprised at some of the things?
I think so. I think,
Water-related, like
just kind of
bubbles,
learning where the biggest thing that they were really, excited to see is just kind of learning where their water physically comes from, and that it's just, a few miles away. It's not something that most people even really think about. But I just kept reiterating with them, just how lucky we are, because, many people don't have that.
Did you go into the sewer part of it much with the 7th and 8th graders?
That's close by too.
Too. So, we talked about it all. And
Okay.
It's good to talk about it all. So, yeah. All right.
So did you make all the contact that you needed? I know I got an email from you, but that was recent, I think. You just emailed me like,
Yeah, so I'll need more for that one.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll have to research that and find
Okay.
out who it was.
Thank you. So just a quick overview of project outreach and coordination. So these,
Before I forget, back to schools, maybe in my district, we should be presenting to schools about some of this stuff instead of town hall. And maybe the kids can bring some information to the home.
Yeah.
I mean, on my opinion is honestly teaching the children, and that goes back to especially water conservation, or, really just, how our water systems work, teaching our children, they talk to their parents about it, and it really is effective.
Let me know when you're going there.
Okay, great. I would love for you to be there. So project coordination and outreach. So we have a lot of big projects going on. We've been making project signs for our West Point and copper projects, and AMI, the copper lift station project, and our Redwood tank project. We have ongoing weekly or bi-weekly meetings with our contractors. And I'm continuously in communication, especially with the Redwood tank project, with Forest Meadows, and the copper lift station project, working with HOAs there as well. So especially as that one, the copper lift station project moves forward, I'm glad that you brought up meeting with the public. We have been actively talking about that and trying to get what's similar in Ebbets Pass, where there's monthly meetings with all of the HOAs, agencies, so water, fire, all of us providing updates to the HOAs. We do that on a monthly basis up in Ebbets Pass, and it's extremely effective. The county supervisor's there. I've talked to Amanda Fallendorf, your supervisor. She's interested in joining. So I'm hoping we can utilize our lift station project as a reason to get these HOAs together on a monthly basis to start communicating and providing updates. And not just us. Wouldn't necessarily want CCWD running this for years. It's in Ebbets Pass, it's more of the HOAs that are, they're the ones that are the driving force of keeping this going, and it works really well.
You didn't mention that sheriff's officers sometimes
Yep,
come.
sheriffs,
Sometimes
yep.
come CHP.
Mhm.
Yeah.
CAL FIRE.
Yeah, if you haven't taken the time to, those of you from Copperopolis to go to one of those, they call it EPOC, the Ebbets Pass, help me with that,
Ebbets Pass.
property owners, yeah. And it's an association of associations.
Yes.
And it's so beneficial. The information that you came here earlier to talk about can be dispensed not only from our organization, but all these others that we mentioned. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to Jessica's point, they run it and make sure that, they drive the agenda. So the agenda is to benefit the HOA. So sometimes the agenda, they always have a guest speaker, usually a guest speaker. Sometimes it's somebody to talk about, it's to laws that affect HOAs that, it's not something that's to deal with the local insurance issue, HOA specific issue. So I think it's really beneficial. It's extremely, as Jessica said, hugely beneficial for us because I think that the county probably the best mechanism we have to communicate with spectrum of people. So I'd love to see that.
If any of the people here today want to consider being part of making that happen, get information. Jessica will probably help work with you to put this together. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Or Russ here would help too.
Absolutely.
Yes, Bertha's always in attendance at Ebbets Pass, so I would expect Russ to be there as well. It's great. Okay. So grant administration. My background, I have a lot of experience with grant management, grant administration, and since I've been here, I've been working with staff and how the district kind of functions right now with grant management is, the bulk of the workload falls on the engineers. And, when I see that, we don't need to do that. We could do it a lot easier. We've been having really good conversations internally on how we can more effectively manage our grants, seek grants, and just kind of keep that focus on, we've had a lot of discussions here in the board meeting about prioritizing our projects for funding and other items, making sure that that's our big focus. What's in our strategic plan is our big focus, and making sure that we're seeking grants that fall in line with that. So we're not overwhelming ourselves and we're not causing any delays in what our big goals are. Moving forward, I'm working closely with the other departments and working closely specifically with Kate Jesus, the engineering coordinator, to start streamlining that process so that I can maybe start taking on more of like the higher level grant administration so that the engineers have more time to focus on their projects and they're not getting overloaded with grant and project management on that front. And another thing I've been doing is working closely with Calaveras or California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I've been able to put my biology hat on, which has been really fun. So I am the designated biologist for CCWD. And earlier this week, I conducted a pre-activity survey out at White Pines for our tule removal project up there. So our construction crew will be out there on Monday to start doing construction and removing vegetation out there. Fortunately, but unfortunately, White Pines Lake is super full, so we can't really do a whole lot of work this year. And with the drought, we don't really feel comfortable with draining the lake. So we're doing what we can. And next year we'll plan and strategize so we can get more work done next year. And then I'm also working closely with staff on putting together a 1602 environmental permit for West Point for our Bummerville reservoir to do a similar type of maintenance work out there. So I've been busy with that. And then IT updates real quick. So with the approval of the fiscal year budget, we moved forward with purchasing 22 desktops and 10 laptops. We were in desperate need of upgrading our computers throughout the entire district. Brandon and I went out to different facilities to really assess what's needed, what's not needed, potentially downsizing on computers. They are working on deploying these computers. So just to think about 32 new computers, it takes about 8 hours to set up one computer. So it's a lot of work, but we have the computers and IT is working on that. The other big thing is continuing on network security hardening. So specifically for cybersecurity and meeting the requirements for insurance. So Brandon's been really focused on that and making that his priority. But the great news is we have a new employee. So we hired Dylan Smith. So he has education in computer science. He went to Columbia College. He's most recently worked at Black Oak Casino as an IT tech there. He is very knowledgeable, very, very personable. Unfortunately, they're both out in the field right now. So next board meeting, Dylan will be here so you guys can meet him. But with all of these new computers, just that alone, he's drastically helping IT so that we can continue moving forward with what we need to do. And then the last topic for updates is water conservation. We've already talked about that a lot today, but just working continuously to keep pushing out press releases, social media posts, reminding the community about the drought. Continuously coordinating with Calaveras Conserves. We just had a meeting last week and we're working on how we want to message kind of just moving into fall weather and winter weather. Still remind people we're in a drought, but it's a little bit more difficult to conduct that messaging to make it effective when people do see it raining. We're working on how our message is going to work over the winter months. I also created a drought video on behalf of Calaveras Conserves. It's just a 1-minute quick video. We push that out everywhere. It's on our website, and the other agencies push that out on behalf of Calaveras Conserves. And the other thing that we have are free water saving supplies. So we've done this in the past, but any of our customers can pick up water conservation supplies here at the office. And I try to, hand them out as much as I can when I'm out with the public as well. So it's just been continuous, just trying to communicate that we are in a drought. CCWD, we do have to conserve that 20% mark. And now that we've kind of made it through summer, it really is, like Brad said, now working internally to see what our numbers look like, because we do have to report to the state. And, we have to hopefully meet that 20% threshold mark. So really understanding, how much our customers consuming versus how much, the districts needing to use for those construction projects or for flushing, things like that. And that's it with my update.
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on your video for at the 75th anniversary. I know that had to be put together very, very quickly with Michael not being able to be there. And the other video that you put together over the overall look at at the district, using the drone and music, and it was awesome. You're talented in that area, and it does it does shine a good light on the district. And
Thank you.
Is that
Thank
on
you.
our website? Is that
Which one?
either one?
The drought one is, the accomplishments is not. That's a good question why it's
Is
not.
there anything on the, about the 75th?
The
Party,
75th party,
or have we given a press release to like the Enterprise or anybody?
I don't think we have, but we should.
okay.
Well, you know, regarding that 75th, with having to, at the last minute, have you be there but not be there, you know, that was amazing. It was really kind of.
I preferred that.
Well, you
it
did
was
a
a
great
great
job
time.
on that. It just,
I'm still trying to figure out where all the excess beer went.
at that meeting,
We may have to have a closed session item about it.
at the birthday party there, the previous employees turns out to be one of my neighbors and we had no idea. We're like, what are you doing here? Well, what are you doing here? And it was pretty amazing, yeah.
Nice.
See a lot of people that you haven't seen.
I just want to add to that, that it was really Jessica that pulled all that together on such short notice. My assumption was it wasn't
Thank
gonna
you.
be, just gonna be absent, and yeah, so it was grateful to be able to participate in that fashion. At
Exactly.
least to some degree. And yeah, to the extent it worked, I'm sure it was somewhat awkward having me on the video screen, but to the extent it worked, it was because Jessica has.
It actually wasn't bad at all. It was kind of,
It would have
cool.
been bad if I did it. It was Jessica that made it good.
I know, it was perfect.
And lastly, the regulating reservoir has a name, and thank you very much for that.
Bomberville.
Could I make a
All
couple
right.
of comments, please?
Yes, go ahead, Bertha.
Oh, okay. Back to the 75th anniversary party, the tone of the party was just so casual and everyone was just so happy to be there. The weather, the food, everything was taken care of. And Jessica, you deserve a lot of credit for that. You and your staff, of course. It was just wonderful. I did want to mention listening to Copperopolis about possibly looking at an epoch type of organization for the homeowners. Jessica would be an excellent source, Russ, for you to get that thing going, because you know how wonderful it is. And, it's just so timely and it's so informative that it would just be perfect for Copperopolis. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that Jessica's looking at grants, because we really need some grant work out at White Pines Lake. That place is getting busier and busier. The people during the holidays are, it's body to body on the beach. That's how busy it is. The traffic is unreal. So whatever we can do to look for grant funding, I think is only to the benefit of Ebbets Pass.
Recognition.
Thank you, Bertha.
All right.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Go ahead, Russ.
I just wanted to mention the town hall meeting that we had in Copperopolis. I was very happy about the way that turned out, and one of the most pleasant accidental occurrences there was the presence of the county representatives. Was very refreshing to me to have them come in and sort of be up there with us answering questions and stuff. They had no obligation to be there, but it's to me, it kind of represents maybe a little bit of a sea change in the relationship between Calaveras County and Calaveras County Water District that has been long overdue. So I think we have a really an excellent choice that the supervisors made about Gabriel Elliott. He's a very articulate man. I think he is really, really dedicated to doing a good job and a job that he he couldn't possibly be criticized because of his motives, because his motives is just to do a good job for the citizens of the county. So I really want to acknowledge his participation, and also our economic development director was there too. That was good. And this picture that you have on this town hall meeting thing, you know, I think that you're supposed to get releases from people that you can identify in these photos. Ralph, did you sign a release on having your picture in this? You did? Okay. Okay. All right, but very good job. Yes.
We're working with Ralph's agent on that. We'll-
Okay.
All right, thank you again, Jessica. Very nice. Look forward to those in the next month. All right, general manager's report, Michael.
All right, I really like these new staff reports. Thank you, Jessica, and it kind of checks off some of the things that I was going to cover too.
Yeah.
I do want to add a little bit more, the town hall there, you know, and I completely agree with Director Thomas's comments. The only disagreement I have is it wasn't accidental. They were there because we are collaborating pretty closely with them, and that I think is the sea change that you're talking about. It hasn't always been the case, and it ebbs and flows, and it varies sometimes from one department to the next. And I think right now, you know, we're on good footing in a lot of different ways, and working more collaboratively with the county than we have in the past. And that's not to say that there's not still challenges. There always are. It's because it's difficult stuff that we're working on usually, though, not because there's disagreement between the people. You're absolutely right. I thought, you know, it wasn't one of the topics of discussion, but, you know, the fact that you had CCWD and the county, you know, standing up in front of the community, addressing, you know, important issues together doesn't happen very often. I thought that was a really meaningful, you know, contribution, and was really grateful for their presence there. So completely agree on that front. And yeah, we actually had two. It's Director Thomas and knows, one hosted by the community the week before, and then one that we hosted. So really always look forward to those opportunities to interact directly and address issues directly with the community. So those were great. The water, wildfire, and wine event that we have coming up, I know I've been talking about it a lot, but it's getting closer. So I'm going to talk about it again. October 20th in Murphy's, and the program is really shaping up to be, I think, better than I was already excited about it, and I'm even more excited about it now. Damon's going to moderate a panel on wildfire preparedness and operational readiness for water agencies. We have some great speakers lined up on that panel. One from Santa Rosa, that they've obviously been through many fires, El Dorado Irrigation District, and then John Osborne with Calaveras OES, who's been through the evolution in Calaveras County from the kind of chaotic response to the Butte fire to the way Calaveras OES functions now. Speaking of good relationships with the county, I mean, they're just fantastic to work with. So that I think is going to be a great panel. There'll be a panel on biomass utilization and forest management. Julie Levin, who's the executive director of the California Biomass Association, is going to be there. She's a rock star. She's going to be awesome. And in addition to Greg Stengel, who we partner with on the project in West Point, that should be starting construction later this year. As Director Davidson and President Cicada know, he's a very interesting speaker and passionate about the topic too. So, and there'll be a couple of other people on that panel as well. Mike Stoudemire from North Star Community Services District. They're developing a biomass utilization project that's not an energy project. It's a thermal project. So a little bit of a different focus to that project, but it's still utilizing fuel thinning biomass. So all good stuff there. I think it's going to be a great project. And we'll have an engineer from the California Energy Commission there as well. And then Sandra Hess at the Calaveras Wine Grape Alliance is coordinating the kind of the keynote portion of the event for us and lining up some speakers to talk about, in addition to her, to talk about wildfire and drought impacts on the wine industry. So I think it's gonna be fantastic. Registration's already looking really good. And then the event that Mountain Counties is hosting that evening, I think will also be great. That's a reception that will be at the Murphy's Hotel, just down the street from the event, the Aqua event. We're expecting Congressman McClintock to be there. We're expecting the Calaveras County Water District signature cocktail to be unveiled that evening. And I've been talking to Bonnie and Nate, the owners of Hinter House Distillery, and they're developing it for us. We felt like we didn't quite have that expertise within in-house.
So I
So
hope it's at least clear.
yeah, contracted that out.
I'm looking at brown stuff there.
You have the option to check a box to RSVP to the reception too, so.
Ours be clear.
I think there's some on the list, but I'll take a look. But yeah, so Hinter House, and it is a little bit of a side note, but they use CCWD water. So when you drink a Hinter House bourbon or a Hinter House gin, you're drinking CCWD water, and they love it. They've said to us before that, you know, they talk to other distilleries. Usually distilleries are located in more urban areas, and a lot of distilleries have to have a whole treatment plant essentially, even though they're being delivered, you know, they're receiving treated water from the agencies that they're connected to. They have to basically retreat the water to get it to the point where they want it before they can distill with it. And Hinter House doesn't have to do that because the water up there is already so clean. They just run it through basically a Brita to get the chlorine out and distill from there. And a larger version of a Brita. But yeah, so we've talked to them in the past about, hey, we need to do some co-marketing since you're so excited about the water and we think it's great water too. So this is an opportunity for them we can shine a spotlight on them. We try to do that for local businesses whenever we can. And I think it'd be a fun event. And I think maybe not all of our board members are registered yet, but if you haven't yet, make sure you get registered because I think it has a chance of filling out.
Yeah, I think 3 of us are registered, and there's already 57 people have signed up. It's going to be, and you sign up at the Aqua.com website.
Well,
And-
the problem that we're having is because I'm signed up with CCWD, member of Mountain Counties, but not Aqua. I've been working with all the IT people and they'll say, okay, you're ready to go sign up. And I just can't make it.
There's a non-member registration.
Yeah, I'll talk with you guys.
Or if you might want to call Aqua directly.
I did.
But once you sign up there is no charge for the Mountain County reception, which is going to be at Murphy's Hotel, the Native Sons Hall. Yeah, there is no charge. So you just walk down. You don't have to sign up for the Mountain Counties. You don't have to go to their website. You don't have to go to our Mountain Counties website and do anything. You just sign up for the Aqua event. And at the end of the day, walk down the road and have free cocktails. And that's going to be, we're Mountain Counties is sponsoring. That's going to be part of my deal, but
Well, I have
let
2 board
Michael
members
finish.
that want to go to the other event as well.
We'll get it taken care of. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, a couple other items. CCWD at the 75th anniversary party, we highlighted the district's longest serving director ever, Director Davidson, and the district's longest.
Feels like it.
The director's longest serving employee ever, who's still with us, Chris Zanardi. We also met recently with the district's longest serving GM, who was Steve Felty, and he flew his little airplane up here, and we picked him up at the Calaveras airport and spent a half a day just trying to download information from him because he was here from 1977 to 1996. So obviously the whole development of the North Fork project, the creation of Utica, and that entity, and a lot of other really kind of just some of the most important things that CCWD has done happened during that time frame. So it was really valuable meeting with him, and we'll have more of those. I think we'll bring him back, and maybe we'll try to coordinate it with a board meeting and introduce him to the board members. So really gracious of him to just volunteer to come up here and talk to us. And he was curious about how the district is doing, and he was surprised when I didn't turn right into the old building off of 49. He didn't even know about this building, so some things have changed. So we also have, Jessica mentioned the new IT person. We have had a new utility crew worker start this week as well. And we are in the second round of interviews for the doubling of the water resources department. So Brad will have some company, and we hope to have that person on board before too long as well. So we'll have some even more new faces around. And I want to, again, at the risk of stealing somebody else's thunder, I want to thank President Cicada for the invitation to the MSD ribbon cutting ceremony and for their wastewater treatment plant project, which is super impressive. And it was a fantastic event, really good turnout. And yeah, just to appreciate the opportunity to be there. It was great. The UPUD's Prop 218 rate hearings coming up, and there's a video that I think associated with that'll be coming out. So we'll keep the board posted on that. Should be in the next few weeks. Speaking of, I hope folks for the first time at a CCWD board meeting don't get the impression that we're all about parties. They are starting to sound like that. The East Bay Mud annual reception at Hardy, which they haven't been able to do since pre-pandemic, is back this year. So if you haven't already RSVP'd to that, the deadline is passed, but we'll get you in if you haven't yet and you want to go.
When is that?
I believe it's
October 7th, 11:30 on Friday. So
next Friday. Yeah.
What's going?
That's always a good event. And then Jessica already mentioned Calaveras Conserves. We talked about coordination with planning and Calaveras OES and other county departments. There's been a lot of coordination with Public Works on paving and timing our construction projects with Public Works. A lot of work, as Director Ratterman and Director Thomas know, going into the East Side GSA discussions with Calaveras County. But the one other thing I want to highlight is Brad and Jessica are both working with that same Calaveras Conserves group on AB 552 implementation, which is now the small entities have to come up with water shortage contingency plans the way we've always had to do. It wasn't a requirement for smaller agencies before, it will be in the future, and the county has some obligations there as well. CCWD's kind of, I think, in the best position in our county-wide water resources jurisdiction role to help those other agencies develop those capabilities. So Brad and Jessica have already taken a lead role in that. And then lastly, and definitely not least, I am really excited to report that we are selling water through the slurry line. For the first time ever. That slurry line has been, it's just such a fascinating piece of Calaveras County history and a fascinating piece of infrastructure. And it's taken way longer than we had hoped it would, but we got there. And the first customer is drawing water off of the slurry line and putting our water rights on the ground. So we're really excited about that. We will be, and then we're already looking at other customers down the line to add additional connections. And so that we'll report back on that. There will be, I think, we might take a page from the MSD book and give it a little bit of time to work before we do a ribbon cutting ceremony, or something along those lines. But there will be, there really needs to be a kind of a community celebration of the fact that we're able to put that old piece of infrastructure back into service and into service to protect our local water rights. It's just such a great, small, it's a small victory, but, putting that water to use is why we're here. So we'll make sure we put together the appropriate way to celebrate that in the months to come. Well, I said that was last section.
I don't think we should do it up there. Maybe not on site, not do it on site.
Water, weed, and whiskey.
I'm sure they would host.
Water, weed, and gin, man.
We'll figure out the best way to do it.
Okay. Very nice.
But I mean, that not only is it just a great piece of infrastructure, a great history, and meets our core mission of putting those water rights to beneficial use, but it required a tremendous amount of collaboration with other agencies, the wheeling agreement with Utica, the first time NCPA has ever approved CCWD's water moving through the Utica system.
Yeah, that's a really big deal.
It's a really big deal in a lot of ways. And it kind of explains, even though it's a relatively small amount of water, it's a much bigger deal than that. So we're really excited that we're finally able to get that done. I will be out over the next couple of days, but I'll be available if you need me.
Yes, vacation. All right, thank you, Michael. Very good. Anybody have any questions for Michael? How about Bertha? You have any questions for Michael? I'm gonna take that as a no.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No, here I am. Looking at the latest copy of the Aqua newsletter, we're celebrating Water Professionals Appreciation Week, October 1st through the 9th. How are we celebrating? Or are we?
I see Stacy online. I don't know if she's, if that's symbolic or if she's actually listening and wants to unmute herself. But I know HR and operations are working on some ways to make sure we do that.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that because we've always missed it. I think probably the last 6 years. And so glad to participate. Okay.
I am here if you guys can hear me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stacy.
So yes, Jessica and I are working on some fun things for our employees and recognizing them next week. We'd like to keep them a surprise at this point for all the other employees who are listening, but we will definitely be celebrating next week.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like the office.
Okay. Well, let's move on to board reports, and Bertha, since you're live, you go first.
Well,
Any board?
go ahead. It's been unusually quiet up here in Ebbets Pass for some reason. I don't know. Well, I know schools are back in session and tourists are gone. And so that's a reduction in our water use and everything, but we're pretty quiet up the hill. And I have nothing to report.
All right. Thank you, Bertha. Scott, you want to go next?
Oh, yeah, just follow up on the celebration in Murphy's, October 20th. Yeah, all of us should, directors should be signed up for that. We should be going. There's gonna, on the list right now, we got directors and general managers, executive directors from, Nevada County, El Dorado County, Placer County. We got people on the list from Kirkwood, Tahoe, and a lot of locals. And as Michael pointed out in an email just this week, to the group that's putting it together, there's the locals besides us haven't even been invited yet. And so that list will, and like I said, there was, as of yesterday, 57 people. It's going to be at the Native Sun. All the speakers and the daytime events put on by aqua.com is where to register for that. And then the reception is sponsored by Mountain Counties and our associate members in Mountain Counties. And it's a free event at the outside venue at the Murphy's Hotel. The lower patio is what they're calling it at Murphy's Hotel. Ought to be a fun event. And then Mountain Counties board, we have a meeting the following morning there at the Murphy's Hotel also. The other thing I wanted to report was just how nice the CSDA leadership conference last week in Napa was, and it was great to see a couple of my fellow board members there and had a good time. It was like a party there as well. So just continuing CCWD. Yeah, it was, and a lot of good stuff. Those meetings, I mean, they pick out all there's the Brown Act stuff but there's just a lot of just how to be a good board member and how to conduct meetings and things that happen in meetings and the horror stories we hear there about other boards in other jurisdictions. We are an amazing board considering what you hear at those things is going on elsewhere. But that's all I got.
Awesome, thank
Oh,
you,
and
Scott.
the operational assistance, I would like to, if we can hear something by the end of the year of how many, just a quick report, maybe in your general manager's report, how many of those we have signed up within the next 2 or 3 months.
Well, like I said, I think we'll bring it back every time we do one. We'll
Okay.
make sure the board's aware of it. Yeah.
Great.
Jeff?
I have nothing.
All right, Russ?
Well, I also wanted to mention that I enjoyed going to that special districts training session. It was a very worthwhile activity. how many people were in the first session or in the?
Yeah,
Probably
our
100,
session was
150 or so.
full.
Yeah.
Yeah, bigger room than this.
It took about an hour and a half for everybody just to go
Oh.
around the room to introduce themselves.
Yeah.
It was-
But that was
It was quite good. I forgot to ask Jessica that you mentioned in your report about billboards and stuff. I wanted to ask you about the Mueller billboard that's near the Copper Firehouse that lists that the meters. The meter project, if the meter project is essentially completed in Copperopolis, you could use that to support and move it down the road to the lift station project, I guess. Maybe it should stay up. I don't know. It just looks kind of out of place now. But and I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank the people from Copperopolis that came today. Ralph often shows up, but sometimes he's the only outsider citizen participant here. So I think it's a good, healthy thing to have citizens come here and see exactly how we grind our sausage. I hope that it. Well, yeah, I mean, we go through all these machinations and hopefully you can observe that we occasionally get things right and we really try. And I hope that you recognize as much as I do what a talented staff we have here.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, we are so lucky. So anyway, come back anytime. I'm done.
All right, thank you. So I also attended the conference in Napa and really enjoyed it and came away with a lot of ideas. So unfortunately, Michael's going to hear about them and we'll see what happens. Also, just wanted to mention that it's Lumberjack Days up in West Point this weekend. And also Grape Stomp, I believe, is going on this weekend as well in Murphy's, isn't it?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is. It is.
And that's all I have to report. So thank you. Future agenda items we already talked about. So next board meetings are Wednesday, October 12th and Wednesday, October 26th. Perhaps you folks would come out and sit with us again. It was nice having you. And now we're going to be going into a closed session, conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, and we have 2 cases. Is there any public comment before we go into closed session regarding closed session?
I do have one question.
Yeah, please. It's up. Sure.
People online can hear you otherwise.
Hang on one second there, Damon.
This question is concerning, Jessica was mentioning the redwood tanks that are going to be replaced. And I'm just curious how that redwood is going to be recycled or reclaimed. Has any thought been given into that?
How about we take that offline once we adjourn, not to dodge it, but if we could take just like a couple minute break between here. and
I could
closed
do a little
session, and
recess,
we'll
then
get
you can
back to
talk
it
to
on
Mike.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so no other public comment online regarding our closed session? Okay, so let's take a short recess and then we'll convene into closed session. Thank you, everybody.
I didn't see you.
Does Bertha have to do anything special?
Bertha, just hang on. We'll be back with you.
First time it's ever
Just take a 5-minute recess.